Start record. All right. So a lot of you already have some textures. You have the walls, you have the floor. If you don't, please make sure to have a wall and a floor, either by drawing 3 planes or 3 boxes. I tend to prefer boxes if I'm worried about clipping at all. So from there, we can definitely look at our textures. We were using a lot of Arnold textures, which means later on, if you want it to render, we'll have to go through and add Arnold lights. They're the ones that work the most effectively because they have that ray system we talked about earlier, that the light rays come in and they bounce around the scene. So here should be the answer to some of the questions. If you are in Hypershade and you are missing any windows, for instance, like right now, I don't have the viewer. I can go to Window, Viewport. Now this is all of them. So if you're missing a window at any point in life, honestly, make friends with the person next to you and then look at theirs and say, oh, hey, look, I don't have that window. I don't know what it's called. Excuse me, can I see what yours is called? It is called Property Editor. Cool. So I have to go to Window, Property Editor, and put it back in. And that's how the Hypershade works. You can click and remove any window, you can start stacking them, it becomes a huge pain. So, anytime you want to open a window, they are all found in Windows. Every window you need for the Hypershade editor is here, and you can open those and close those. Now, for some of you, if you wanted to do something like a floor tile, these AI standard surface shaders are going to be overkill. They're going to make it look a little funny, so think of AI standard surface as ones that are going to have kind of a shininess to it, something that you want to adjust. So for AI standard surface, I know that I want brushed metal. Is brushed metal still a thing? Is it just chrome? Brushed metal, replace. So I have my brushed metal. I'm going to go and I think this is easier. If I do a shift, shift, shift for some of these little objects, if I select them, I can right-click on an object, assign material to selection. If I want to assign it to multiple materials, like this flower, if I decided that I wanted to do a shader for my flower, I can click them and assign random ones. Now, one of the interesting things about flowers is there's not really a good AI standard surface to do for flowers. And flowers tend to not be the same color all the way around. So this is actually 100% new. If I can have everyone look up here. If I type ramp, I have a shader called a ramp shader. A ramp shader is their fancy name for a gradient. So if I wanted to make a flower where I want the inside of it to be white, I could select this color, selection, I could make it white. And then if I wanted the other picture, or if I wanted the other color, I can click here and add another color. Let's say I want it to go to pink. I can select here and select a pinkish color. That's kind of magenta, I know, but. And I have linear or I have smooth spline. I can change the color input by facing angle, light angle. So there's a lot of different ways. Facing angle, this is all determined by the light. So if I don't have a light in the scene, these are going to show up kind of interesting. I can also, once again, change anything from linear to smooth to spline. So if I look up my ramp shader, and then I go to this, if I went to 6, this is combined. Remember I said under mesh, we could always do separate. I'm going to shift. No, I want to deselect you. So I'll just do this. Control, 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 control. And then if I wanted to grab this ramp shader, I can right click, go to the middle, or I can also do that right click assigned to material selected. And then when I render, you're actually going to see separate lighting effects. Now, sometimes this gets a little weird with the Arnold effect. So you can try that, but this is a really good way to do petals. It doesn't look like a gradient right now because I don't have a light in it, but if I shine a light on that flower, you're going to see a different effect. Remember, no matter what we've done, if we're going to put a shiny material on something, we want it smoothed. Or else what you're going to see is you're going to see all these square chunks in it. So I would go ahead and do a mesh smooth to my vase if I haven't already. I know most of you did. To the table, it looks like this has already been smooth, but I'm going to go ahead and hit G just to make sure. And G here just to make sure that my stuff is smoothed. From here, my AI standard surface materials. Standard. My computer is being a little chunky today. I'm going to go ahead and just put a ceramic. I think I'm going to put a ceramic. Replace. Cool, maybe. Alright, my preset is not working. I might just have to let that whole thing run. Okay, so I have a problem with Arnold today, so we're going to see what happens. But you guys kind of get the point, right? So, after you leave, whoopsie, wrong ceramic, I'm going to have to play with this and see what's going on with my computer. Now, if I want a texture like a tiled texture or a floor texture or something on this base, I can go ahead and go to Object. And then I would probably make, if I want it to look more metallic, I can make an Efong. If I want it to be just slightly shiny, I do a Blinn. If I want it to have no shininess, I do a Lambert. But that really doesn't happen much in the land of flooring, right? If we look down at our tile, it's shiny. If we look at wood, it usually still has a little bit of a shine. And I can do that by either going to Create Materials, Blinn, or right-click Material, Blinn. Now, this is the most important Google search term you will remember. If I wanted a wood floor, I would say wood seamless. Everyone see that beautiful word right there, seamless? If you tile things, a lot of times, if you just tile any random picture, you know how you get that weird seam, like the weird lines in it? Whenever you do that, people design textures to be seamless. And a lot of times you can tell if it's right. You can look at the right side versus the left side. And I might even say wood floor, because what I'm going to get is more of these type of designs. But I want to make sure that I have a seamless texture. Shutterstock, notice I have to buy it. There's a lot of free texture sites as well. So we'll see. Are you going to make me pay for this one? Yeah, I have to log in. Textures.com is free. No, if you want to do a tile bathroom, you can do that. Here we go. I'm going to make this one. And I can just save image as. Where do I save my images if I want to put them in a project? Source images. So,
would there be a way to apply a 3D texture we find online, like a carpet?
Kind of. Normally what those happen to do is the 3D aspects come from the normal map. And so you'd have to make sure that you're linking the normal map as well. And I will be honest that normal maps are a little bit more than I wanted to get into for this project. So if you would like to look it up, I can show you where those are very quickly, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on normal maps because they can be a bit tricky. So for Blinn, once I click here, I'm going to go ahead and select File. And from File, I want to select Data D, go to that folder, Source Images, and looks like I saved it wrong. So, I did, didn't I? Where was it? I'm going to save it again. And I'm going to make sure I actually saved it as a JPEG. Oh no, it isn't source images, and it thinks it's a JPEG, so I wonder what's going on. It's in table settings, 1920. So I'll just pick another one. Maybe that one says it's a JPEG, but kind of isn't. Save image as. Wood, floor, dark. And if both of these don't work, I'm going to know that what's probably happening is that I'm on a, I'm trying to get textures that are free-ish, or sometimes it's even just that I had that open. Yeah. So I'm going to have to do this through slightly more official means rather than just searching here. Because I want save image as, and see they're all download and they're all showing up that they're there. But then they don't want to show up that they're there. I'm going to try one more little trick. I think I'm having some pretty exceptionally not good computer issues today, to be honest. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go D drive. I know you can't see it, but this is my cheaty way. So I can also try a node connection and see if that'll let me override it a little. Yeah, my Hypershade's also like vanishing, which is really obnoxious. Alright, you go in here. Cool! Alright. So I'm going to delete this file extension. Oh, see, that's because, alright, I know what's happening. I don't think this will work. Even though it was saying it's a JPEG, it's coming in as a JFIF. So I probably need to take that into Photoshop and resave it. And that makes a lot of sense. But what I would do is I'd actually drag the out color to color. And I'd see if it could find it. It did. I'd take some of that reflection down. I'd definitely take a lot of that reflection down. And then on this 2D place, this is the important part, is when I put this texture on, it's going to look extremely blurry, right? And that's because I'm taking one of these images and stretching it out over the entire thing. When I load an image in, if I click 2D texture, I get this repeat UVs. Remember, U and V is just an extra term for X and Y. So I would say, okay, how many times do I want this image to repeat? So I'm going to start with 10 and 10. And see if, yeah, and see it already looks better, right? And so what I need, how I got to that was, once again, I clicked on my color. I added a file. Once I added that file, it's loaded in over here. And in this node, after this floor picture, there's a place 2D texture. You have to click on 2D texture. If you find this menu kind of intimidating, if it starts being a little strange, if I click on the object, I can also get there by going to Attribute Editor, selecting Blinn 1, and doing the same thing. Clicking here to get in the texture. And then from there, normally if I click down here, I should get the rest of the options, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So there we go, UV coordinates. So if I click down to UV coordinates and I select this, I can get to that same menu. I find this way harder, but just showing you that there are two ways. But you want that repeating texture to happen. How'd I know it was 10 and 10? I've done this a lot, so I guessed. But just put in bigger numbers. I usually go in increments of 5 or increments of 10. And then from there adjust it. So a lot of tomorrow may be just clicking your numbers and adjusting them. For wall paint, actually let me just, I know I'm having some Arnold problems, but I do want to test one more thing. And then we can do some wall paint. So I'm going to add one more. Oh man, I have to close that door. Now your whole video is going to have hammering in the background.
Want me to close the door?
If you want. Thank you. Oh, that's the wrong one. Haha! Oh, that's a bad idea. So we're going to go ahead, standard surface, standard surface. Did you see how everything turned green? Do you know why it turned green? Because when I deleted this, it had a texture on it. When I delete it, it's now lost its texture. So if you ever see things that are green, it's because they don't have a texture associated with them. If you put a texture back on, it will normally fix it. From there, if I go to an AI standard surface 3, that's standard surface 2, where's standard surface 3? There we go, there's standard surface 3. Let's go to my preset. I am going to do a glass, which I find an inconvenient texture to work with, so why not? And half the time it will make your thing disappear because it's trying to show it, and glass reads as transparent. You can kind of adjust the color, but not really, because the base color is always this. But if I go to specular color, I can adjust the color it's going to reflect. So if I wanted my table tinted blue, I could put a blue tint there. Transmission is interesting. This is a word that means how the light goes through it. So if I wanted, I could click on this, which has probably appeared down here because my computer. Oh, and I have to hit OK. And if I adjust the transmission color, you're actually going to see the whole thing tint, because now the color going through it and the color going here will both affect it. Do you think this is an easy or a difficult texture for the computer to render? It's difficult. So if you're starting to see your render times go up, if your computer's starting to crash, I would definitely replace it with something easier. But just to let you know, that's how you use glass, because I see some people already trying to use glass. For wall paint, that one's going to be a little easier. I can once again right click, I can go up there to create. And I can put another blend. If I want it really shiny, I can do an e-fong. If you're going for like the shiniest bathroom in all the land. I don't know. I've never seen a kitchen need that level of shine, but you know. Whatever. I mean, if you're like a wall paint, you would pick a color of the wall. So I guess we'll make these people exceptionally... No, I can't make them exceptionally boring. Let's give it a green tint. And once again, I want my specular to only be a slightly lighter shade, right? When we shine light on our walls, we're not seeing it that it's this bright light white on our walls, right? It's actually just a lighter shade of the same color. We want the eccentricity to spread out. We don't want it to be pinpoint because that makes it look really glossy. We want our eccentricity to spread out. Specular roll-off, we can have that roll-off as well. Reflectivity is going to go down. Keep a little bit of reflectiveness if you want, but you really don't need to. And from there I put my texture on my walls. Huh? I know. It is a gross color. You're going to see what it looks like in a minute. But I do want I want some weird reflections. You go to click files. So you click next to this color. Where it says color, you click the checkerboard. Now, lighting. There's a couple different lights we can put in this scene. If I wanted it to look like this was being lit from outside, I could do a physical sky, but I don't have a lot that's going to transmit that sky through my area, so parts of this are going to end up in shadow. Even if we have light coming in through a window like we have now, we normally have lights above that are going to offer a lot of different lighting. Now, I count in here, this room actually has usually 65 lights. So a lot of people put in one light.
Please pardon this interruption. We do have one bus change today.
Oh.
It's for Centennial High School. Bus 623 will be replacing bus 287. Once again, bus 623 will be replacing bus 287 for Centennial High School.
So a lot of students will put one light in, wonder why it hasn't worked. If I wanted to duplicate a lighting effect like this, if I wanted these long lights in it, I could make a cylinder. Oh, that's gigantic. We'll scale this down. Scale this up. Look at this lovely fluorescent light, right? Even though fluorescent lights are disgusting. They're really gross. I don't like them. But if I want a light to kind of spread evenly around here, I can actually click on this and I can go to Arnold, Lights, Mesh Light. That's now turned this object into a light. And if I go to Arnold Render, I can either go to Arnold Render and it's going to show me kind of a real-ish time render, maybe. Or I could go to my rendering, render setup. And I'm going to guess a lot of this are the error messages that I'm getting. But it also just might be that my light is really dark. Again, to adjust light, you want to put the shadows up. So I can do like maybe a 15. Another good light for doing indoors is actually going to be an area light. And an area light appears like this. It has a box, and then it shows the direction that the light is pointing. And sometimes I put this light closer to my objects if I want them to be like specifically lit. And we'll start to see if I get any effect. And so my errors are that my lights are reading very, very dim. That I'm having some error with my area. So I'm going to bump this up to, let's say, 70. Let's do it and see what happens. Sometimes, even though that's a little crazy, if I'm getting results that are this bad, I like to throw in a little bit of overkill just to see what numbers I need. And there we go. So 70 is making it lit like it's normal on mine. So I'm probably going to have to go up to those earlier ones. Notice this ramp shader, because it's not reading the light correctly, isn't showing up very well. You can experiment with the ramp shader. You might also just want to go back to a normal blend or a normal standard surface, depending on which lights it interacts with. Sometimes the ramp works really well, sometimes it doesn't. Because it's kind of a special effect, a lot of times it doesn't like reading there. So I've shown you guys a lot. I'm going to post this video onto YouTube, but animation. And I know you were all afraid of animation, but, or maybe not all of you, some are like, awesome, right? But some of you were like, oh no. It's incredibly easy. If we go to our window, workspace, we can go to Maya Classic. It'll have a timeline. If I don't have a timeline, I can go here and just open like time editors. This is it. It's 30 frames a second. So right now my animation is 4 seconds. I said anywhere from 4 to 6 so I could increase this. This is the visible amount of the timeline it shows. That's going to create an issue. If I want it bigger, I just increase these numbers. How do I animate? I move this bar. And I can either do a set key by right-clicking, hitting a key, or I like S. Okay. S on your keyboard.
Is it just like stop motion?
It is indeed like stop motion. It is exactly like stop motion. I go to the first frame, I hit S. Then I have to go to my next frame, I move it, I hit S. That's the important part. You have to go to your next frame and then move it and then hit S. Once I have done that, and I click in the view, it moves. That is all there is to animation. Click in the timeline, hit S. Go ahead and save. I will show this tomorrow. I will see maybe if I can sneak in. And it is Wednesday, so